My experience as a child. In the countryside in the 70s. We had no electrical appliances in every household here except incandescent lamps. At that time, electricity bills were charged according to the number of light bulbs. And some people used dim kerosene lamps or smoky diesel lamps. In order to save a few cents a month for a light bulb, or even no electricity. At that time, I was most afraid of the summer, especially the summer when there was a lot of rain. And at night, it was hot and stuffy, and there were many mosquitoes, and there were no mosquito nets. And I couldn't sleep after being bitten by mosquitoes. I heard from my mother that when I was 9 months old, my grandfather and father separated. My father went to the coal mine to go down to the coal kiln, save money, buy coal and bring it home. Hired someone to make bricks, burn the brick kiln. And built 3 9-foot tile houses with eaves on the far edge of the village. At that time, there was no one living in front of you, left and right. My yard is not a yard, there is no wall, it is a lonely house with 3 rooms. And a large elm tree was planted in front of the house, which was a sapling that my grandfather dug up somewhere. And at first, I did not understand why I planted this kind of tree, which was not tall and crooked. Every time it is hot, there are a lot of dense yellow insects on the tree poles. And I am curious, and when I press it with my hand, the small insects flow out yellow juice, which is very smelly. Grandpa said that these elm trees can save lives in a famine year. When I was a child, I didn't understand, I only knew that in the spring, you can eat elm money, eat it raw, eat it steamed. When my mother was making noodles, I would climb up to the elm tree and pick up the elm leaves, put them in the noodle pot, and serve them as vegetables. It's not bitter, it's smooth, and it's a little chewy. It's hot, and it's an ambush. In the evening, my mother would find a flat place under the elm tree, sweep it with a broom, and spread a mat made of sorghum stalks, on which my brother and sister walked several times, and the house was stuffy, and the yard was perhaps. And from time to time there was a little wind. Or, the mother lit piles of wheat bran around the area to smoke the mosquitoes. In this way, we can't drive away hungry mosquitoes, our brothers and sisters are bitten by mosquitoes. This one shouts itching, that one shouts itching, and my mother scratches this one. And then scratches that. I couldn't stand it, and I fell asleep before I knew it. One night, I don't know how long I slept. In the haze, my mother was calling my name, "Get up, it's raining." I straightened up in a daze and sat down on the mat, my body cold and cold, it was the raindrops that hit me. My mother carried my sister into the house, and when my mother came back to pick up my brother, she saw that I was sitting on the ground and still hadn't moved, so she urged me again. "It's raining, come into the house." I got up and ran, not into the house, but into the distance, outside the village. This is what my mother said later. In front of my house, the yard is also an elm forest. And in the distance is a poplar tree planted by someone else's house, which is messy and almost impossible to see the road, and in the dark night when it is about to rain, it is not clear to see the tree and the road. My mother said that when she put my sister in the house and came out again, I would not be on the mat. Call me, and I will not be silent. Only the sound of me running barefoot, running into the night in the distance. My mother chased after me, calling my name continuously. And when I was grabbed, I suddenly woke up. I seemed to have been running with my eyes closed. In the dark night, there was only the sound of raindrops falling rapidly. There was no trace of wind, there was a penetrating silence. My mother took me by the arm, went back to the house, lit a kerosene lamp, and asked me why I was running. I can't say a thing or two, I really don't know why. My mother looked out of the dark door, closed the door, and said to me, "Sleep." In the past, I didn't close the door when I slept at night on a rainy day, so it was cooler. Later, my mother told me that I scared her that night. She chased me a few hundred meters, and she was about to leave the village and hit the main road. I was silent, as if someone were pulling me away. Since then, my mother won't let us sleep in the yard unless my father is at home. I don't have any impressions and memories of the experience that night. Perhaps, I ran a few hundred meters in the tree garden with my eyes closed, shuttling, and did not hit a tree. It's incredible to think about my behavior that night. I think it's the unconscious behavior of the brain. The brain's instruction to move, to run, the visual function of the eye, and even the behavior of avoiding obstacles. The brain doesn't record this in this process. Walking through the woods, I didn't even hit a tree. When I woke up, I didn't know why I had run so far. This is what people often call hysteria or night travel. Behind my house is a shallow drainage ditch, which was dug by the production team, and has been abandoned. On the opposite side of the ditch, there are a few lonely graves scattered in the sporadic area. And no one has ever been seen adding soil to the grave. At first it was still very large, and then it slowly became smaller. At that time, in the countryside, the pigs of the farmers were all free range. And the big pigs and small pigs were scurrying around the village. There are some low-lying areas on the opposite side of the ditch. And when it rains, water is collected, and nearby pigs come here to collect mud. In the winter, during the winter vacation, children also play here, climbing up and down the mound and swaying the mound, which is not a big mound. Later, the pig arched the mound almost to the ground. That year, I had just started elementary school. It was already autumn, and it was still very hot. One day after school, I put my school bag home and went over the ditch to find a friend to play. Just to play. When it was time to have dinner, I didn't go home. The sky was already dark. It was overcast, a little stuffy, and there wasn't a hint of wind. The whole village was shrouded in misty water vapor, and there was a drizzle of rain floating in the sky, falling on the body, face, and feeling very uncomfortable. My mother stood at the back of the house and shouted my name to go home, then dinner. I walked home with great reluctance, and as soon as I reached the low-lying place, I saw a cluster of green things not far away, motionless. I'm a little curious. What is it? I couldn't help but stop. Well, I went over to see what it was. When I took a few steps forward, and was only a little more than 10 steps away from it, this green thing also moved. As if it was retreating, or rather forward, as if it wanted to avoid me, not wanting me to get close. I stopped, and it retreated a distance, slowly not moving. It's so hard that adults often tell us children the beard of good and evil. I'm a little excited when I think about it. Finally, let me touch it. It is said that the fur beard can allow the family to stock up on food overnight and fill it up. You can also move all the food overnight. That's not right. Adults say that the fur beard is white. Animals like rabbits. But this thing, green and shiny, looks a little infiltrating. At this time, I heard my mother's voice calling for me in my house. Forget it, go home. I trotted a few steps to the small ditch behind my house. And there was still some unwillingness, while looking back, what? It actually chased after it. At this time, I was a little frightened, and I hurriedly jumped down the ditch, almost crawling, holding the edge of the ditch with both hands, and turned over. Looking back, the green thing stopped at the edge of the small ditch, and I was only a few meters wide from it, and this time, I saw it clearly. It was like a green fire, beating up and down. Damn. I'm really scared. Shouted out. Turn your head and stare back, raise your legs and run. This time, it also moved, did not turn over the ditch to chase over. Along the small ditch, brushed, quickly moved eastward, like flying, and disappeared all at once. I ran into the house out of breath. Mom, screamed, there's something. I was so anxious and scared that I couldn't speak. What's wrong? What's wrong? Mother asked me. There's a green thing that's picking me up. Something like a bunch of green fire. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. That's phosphorus fire, it doesn't hurt. My mother comforted me. What is phosphorus fire? I asked my mother. It's what people call ghost fire. My mother patted me on the back. Don't be afraid of it. It's just what scares you. Come, wipe your hands with red mercury and go to get rid of bad luck. My mother took a bottle of potion from the medicine cabinet and poured it into my hand. My mother was a barefoot doctor, and my medicine cabinet was full of bottles and jars of medicine. I want to eat bread grains mint lozenges. I took the opportunity to ask my mother. Usually, my mother prevented me from stealing it and put it at the top of the medicine cupboard. I've eaten, I'll eat again. Before you know it, the fear is gone. It was the only time in my life that I had a close encounter with a ghost fire, and I haven't encountered it since. Maybe many people don't have this kind of experience and don't have the opportunity to encounter ghost fire. When you're there, you won't be afraid. Most of the time you don't think it's it. I asked elderly people who had similar experiences and summarized the conditions and characteristics of the appearance of ghost fires. Most of the nights are dark and cloudy days without sun, the temperature is muggy. The air humidity is high, there is no wind, or sometimes there is a breeze. Most of the places where it appears are close to the burial grounds or graves of the corpses. According to the current saying, ghost fire is phosphorus fire. Is the conditional volatile combustion of the phosphorus material in the bones after the decomposition of human or animal corpses. It can't do without humidity, which is moisture. Why are there so few opportunities to encounter ghost fire in modern times? Most of the times when you encounter ghost fire are in the past few decades. I think it has something to do with the depth of burial and the treatment of the body. In the old society, most of the coffins where the corpses were buried were relatively thin and shallow in the soil. And in special cases, there were exposed corpse wilderness. What now? Cremated. The smoke is gone. Nothing. Man's faith has changed.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and put notification on to watch more videos. If you have similar experience, please comment and let me know your experience.